Today in our 2019 Winnebago Adventurer Motorhome, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the SumoSprings Maxim custom helper springs for the rear axle. Having a motorhome can be a really fun thing and we can enjoy it a lot. We can go places we've never been before, spend time with our family, go camping, or anything like that. But at the same time, it can be really stressful and even scary at times because our motorhome it's a rather big vehicle and there's a lot of area here for the wind to catch. So when we're driving down the road, it may feel like we're getting pushed around and the body starts to lean and roll, especially when a semi drives past us or we hit a big crosswind. So before we put any of our suspension components on, let's take it on our test course and see how it handles. As I bring my motorhome through the slalom course, I can definitely feel a lot of body roll going on, like it almost wants to lean before it starts to turn. And coming in and out of the turns, it really feels like I need to slow down so I don't lose too much control, and it's just kind of an unnerving feeling. As I'm going through the bump course, you can definitely feel every single one. The alternating bumps is really throwing me side to side, and the rebound on them is a little unnerving, and I'm really just having to fight the steering wheel the entire way. But now that everything's on, let's go ahead and take our motorhome back on our test course and see how it handles now. As I'm driving through the slalom course here, I can immediately tell a difference. I can relax a lot more, I feel a lot more in control of the motorhome, and really it doesn't roll as much, just feels a lot more planted on the ground, and it's a lot easier to maneuver in and out of the turns. And over our bumps course, don't get me wrong, the bumps you can definitely feel them, but the motorhome's definitely reacting more quickly and it gets back to that neutral position rather than continuing to bounce a whole lot. Overall, our motorhome just feels a lot more stable. It's a lot more comfortable to drive, and going over the bumps and in and out of the turns, it's not rolling as much, and it definitely just feels more solid. So here's what our Sumo Springs look like once we have them installed. They're going to mount in between our leaf spring and the frame, and they're going to provide us cushion whenever we hit bumps and support the heavy weight of our motorhome so we can minimize the amount of sway and driver fatigue and not have to fight the steering wheel so much. And the way they're going to do that is our springs are going to have a progressive rate to them, which means that when we hit a bump or we don't have that much weight in our motorhome, our springs are going to compress and they're going to be a little bit softer, have a softer engagement. But the more weight we add and the bigger bumps we hit, the stiffer and more compressed our springs are going to get. So they're going to compress and give us that extra support so it's not putting so much stress and strain on our factory suspension. Now what's nice about our springs is that when it does start to compress, we're going to have very minimal side expansion. So we're not going to have to worry about any other components that may be somewhat close. The springs are going to be made out of a durable microcellular urethane. They're going to work in temperatures ranging from -25 degrees Fahrenheit all the way up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and they're going to resist damage caused by oils, road salts, and even UV rays. Now, our springs are going to have a 3,000 pound weight capacity. Keep in mind it's not going to increase the payload of your motorhome, they're just there to help support all the weight. Now we're going to have one spring on each side of our axle. So we'll have one on the left and one on the right. They're going to work independently from each other, which is nice because if we go through a turn, one spring is going to compress while the other one's going to stretch, so that we keep our motorhome nice and level and we don't have so much of that mushy sway feeling we're going in and out of turns or possibly getting passed on the highway. Now a lot of our customers are comparing these to airbags. Now airbags are going to be nice, they're going to give us a lot more of adjustment to them, but our Sumo Springs aren't going to require any kind of maintenance once we have them installed. Also, we're not going to have to monitor any kind of pressure or run any airlines like airbags. We can simply install these and not have to worry about them anymore. The springs are going to come with everything you need to get it installed, all the hardware, brackets, and the springs themselves. But now that we've seen what it looks like and gone over some of the features, let's put one side on together. To begin installation, you want to park your motorhome on a nice level surface, and we're going to lift up the back end, but you want to lift it by the frame so that the axle can hang down freely, and we're going to pull one side of the tires off because we're working right in this area right here. So we're going to get our spring assembled. So we'll grab the spring itself and we'll grab our upper bracket. Now you're going to notice it's got a kind of rolled lip on it, or it has this little tab sticking up. You want to make sure that it is facing up, and we'll have two holes. We'll line those two holes up with the two holes that are in our spring, Then we're going to take 2 flange nuts and we'll get them started, making sure that they don't cross thread. And we'll come back with a 9/16 socket and tighten these up. We're going to want to grab the lower bracket. Now it's important to see which way this is going to be facing. So you'll notice it's got a little hook on there. That needs to be going towards the back of the motorhome. And the opening here is going to be going towards the front. So when we attach everything, when it's standing upright, it should look like this. But we'll flip our spring over and we'll have a threaded hole in the bottom. We'll take our bracket, line it up, and we'll take another one of those 3/8 flange nuts and secure it down. Now on the bottom one, I'm going to leave it a little loose so we can still have everything move a little bit, in case we need to make any kind of adjustments and get the angle right. We're going to take our spring assembly and we're going to place it directly on top of the leaf spring, and you want to make sure that you're forward of the axle itself. Now the little tab here, it should line up with the factory U-bolt, and those 2 square holes should be on either side of the leaf spring itself. So you want to make sure it's positioned in there pretty well. Now we're going to take a tape measure, and on either side of our bracket we're going to measure from the top of the frame or the bottom, and we're going to make a mark. We'll follow the instructions and want us to make a mark at 4.5 inches. So we'll put a mark on each side. Now since the suspension is hanging down, we need to lift the axle up so it's going to be in the right position where the weight would be on it. So I have a floor jack underneath the hub of the axle here, and I'm going to lift up on this until I can get the holes in the bracket here to line up with that mark on each side. You just want to be careful when you're lifting it, because you can see we do have some electrical lines right above our spring that we want to watch out for and not cause any damage to. So as I'm lifting it, you can see that it's going up a little crooked, so you just want to kind of level it out and see if your 2 lines meet up, and if they don't, you can either raise or lower it till they are in the correct position. So with our spring in the correct position, I'm going to take that marker again and mark out the lower hole as well as the middle hole on each side. So we can remove our spring, and we're going to drill through the frame in the 4 locations we marked. It is a good idea to go behind the frame, and even if you just reach back there and feel, make sure there's no lines or any other kind of things that behind the frame that may get damaged. I'm going to start out using a small drill bit just so I can get a pilot hole started, making it easier when we enlarge them to the final size. And with our pilot hole drilled, I'm going to come back with a 7/16 drill bit and enlarge it to the final size. We'll repeat that for the other 3 remaining holes. So with all of our holes drilled now, we're going to put our spring assembly back in place. So again, we'll just kind of line everything up, make sure it's sitting how we want it. And we'll line up our holes. We're going to take the black 3/8 flange bolts. We're going to go through the bracket and through the frame in each one of the holes that we drilled. Now on the inside of the frame, we're going to secure those bolts with a 3/8 flange nut. So you can either crawl underneath or reach behind and get the nut started on the bolt. Right now we just want to get them hand tight so that we know the spring won't move and it's in the correct position. On the lower bracket here where those 2 square holes are, we're going to grab our long carriage bolts. We're going to drop them down through. You may have to work it around the spring a little bit, but it should drop down. We'll put the other one in place as well. So your bolts should be dropping down, extending past the leaf spring here. We're going to grab our saddle clamp. It's doing kind of a U or a C shape. We want that flat part to be facing up towards the leaf spring. It'll have 2 holes in it, so we'll line that up with the 2 carriage bolts coming down. We're going to take another 3/8 flange nut. We're just going to loosely attach it so it'll hold the saddle clamp in place. I'm going to come back and tighten the nuts up with the 9/16 socket. When you're tightening it up though, you want to alternate going back and forth between the two so that it is even clamping force as it tightens down. For our bolts that are going through the frame, I'm going to be using a 9/16 wrench and socket, and we're going to tighten up the hardware. Now really you're just going to have to find out what's easier for you, whether it be holding the bolt on the outside and tightening the nut on the inside, or vice versa. Now that everything's in, I'm going to take a 9/16 ratcheting wrench and I'm going to tighten up the bolt on the bottom that's holding our Sumo spring in place. With this side done, we can lower the jack, let the axle come down, put our tire back on, and repeat the same process on the other side. That'll finish up your look at the Sumo Springs Maxim custom helper springs for the rear axle on our 2019 Winnebago Adventurer Motorhome.